Hey, hello, everybody. We're back again talking about Chapter 8, Evaluating Employee Performance. So we'll go through the presentation and hopefully if you have any questions, you can email or do something like that, but let's roll. So objective number 1 was analyze the purpose of formative and summative evaluations, performance evaluations. And I got to be honest, this kind of threw me off at the beginning because of some of the wording in it. It's different than the models we use. So I had to go back and kind of rethink the process of what the book is talking about. But the two that we're talking about today are summative observation. The summative is what you do, could be with a new teacher. You do a mid-year summative and then a summative at the end of the year, or you may do a summative assessment with all your staff at the end of the year. But summative evaluations, like I said, they're conducted annually or semi-annually. And then the formative is for development. It's used to gather data that can be used in the summative. Could be that mid-semester where you go in and have a walkthrough, or you have a formal form that you use at that time. And then you find some things that you say, hey, here's what we want to see coming up in the summative. And then you can put that into the summative. And again, when you think about these, they're different. Obviously, with the formative, you're trying to develop a plan possibly for improvement. And with the summative, you're gathering all the information from the past school year or the semester that you put into that. And then when you think about these, I don't know what everybody else has, but obviously at each district, there's going to be different models that are used. Here at Plattsmouth, we use the Danielson model. And I know some schools use Marzano. And then there's also the NDE model that's been put out there, the supporting educator effectiveness through development, the SEED model. So whatever your board puts in the policy, that's the one that you guys will use. I also think when you talk about observations, in my opinion, you have to be in the classrooms frequently. We here at Plattsmouth try to do a rotation every week. There's 3 administrators in the building. And then each week we try and take a different group of teachers, and then we discuss in our leadership team meetings what we saw in the classroom. So we're kind of all on the same page there. And then the feedback for an observation needs to be relevant. And again, I think that goes back to making sure you're in the classrooms. If you're only in that classroom to do the observation and you sit on a teacher and say, this is something I'd like to see you get better at, it's really hard for them to take that feedback and look at it as being relevant when they've only seen you in their classroom once or twice. And then I also think it needs to be a good tool, in my mind, needs to be written to where the teacher and the principal can sit down and have a clear understanding of what they're talking about. And so that's some things that I would look at. And again, I think it needs to be used in a way that has relevancy, which we touched on a little bit, because we don't want our staff, just like we don't want it to be something where, okay, it's just a hoop you have to jump through. Because obviously that teaching and that instruction is going to have a large impact on student achievement as well. So, and then all the parts of the rubric that you have in there are going to need to be covered and discussed. That's what I came up with. Zach, Angie, what do you have to say on these things?
Todd, I was going to say, oh, sorry, Zach. I was going to say
Go ahead.
that I completely agree with your point on rather than it being a hoop to jump through, it needs to be relative. And if a teacher and an administrator don't have a good relationship or a relationship at all, it's not nearly as effective. So not having those required walkthroughs and formal observations be the only time that an administrator is in the classroom. I think it changes the way things look and changes the way feedback is received. So if we have an administrator that's in the classroom more frequently, less formally, when it comes to observation, an administrator knows, am I seeing the true way they teach, or did they amp this up just because I'm in here and I don't know the difference because I'm not in the classroom very often?
And one of the things, getting into the classroom, being in my second year next year as a principal, you know, I've always said, oh, I need to be in the classrooms, and it's a lot more difficult than you think based on how your day goes and how busy it gets. But one thing that we've really worked on trying to fix in our district is the mindset that the evaluation tool is a way to get teachers. I've had a lot of my staff has felt like the evaluation model and we are Danielson as well, but the evaluation is more of a way for us to catch them doing something wrong or to ding them. And I've really tried to change that mindset into, no, it's a tool for growth. It's a growth mindset. It's being able to take the things that you're doing well and build on those, and then the areas where we might be able to improve to grow in that area. And just trying to change that mindset with the staff has been a hoop, not a hoop to jump through, but it's been something to, it's been a challenge, I guess, for me to change that mindset to see it as more of a useful tool than it is just a way for them to get in trouble, I guess. So
I would take it a step further too. What I do is at the end of the school year, I send out what I call summative observation of myself to the staff, and it's voluntary and it's also anonymous. So there's 5 questions on there that I think are relevant to the success of a building administrator, and then I let them answer that. And I take that information, and here in about a week or 2, I'll start digging through that, and then I'll develop my goals for next year based upon what the staff has provided me. And then I'll also take that to them at the beginning of the year and show them how the questions were answered. And so I have a 3-point thing on there where it's highly effective, or developing. And then just take all that into consideration and look at it. And I can tell you right now, complete transparency, one of the things that I got back was, I'd like to see you in the classrooms more. And that's a goal of mine. And it's like Zach just said, sometimes so many things come across your desk, so many things happen that you don't get to the classroom as much as you want. So what I started doing towards the end of the year was I just put it on my Google Calendar, like blocked out that time so that another meeting doesn't pop in and take away time. And then also be in classrooms more so too, just to see what's going on in the classroom. Don't always go in the classroom just to be observing.
all right, moving to number 2.
So our second objective we want to talk about is contrast and compare various teacher evaluation models, including establishing professional SMART goals. This is the one I think that kind of threw me off, because they talked about the evaluation model as being remediation. In my mind, you have the evaluation, you have the direct improvement plan, then it may need to go to remediation. So you have the remediation one, and then goal setting. From the book, what it's telling us is that remediation model is primarily formative. The object of this model is to bring all teachers to a level of competence. So that's that formative. You've got your rubric, you go in and you look and see where they fall within. And the goal is to make sure that everybody's satisfactory, at least, or progressive. You know, you don't want them to be on the developing side. You want them at the progressive so that they're on there. And then so you can use that. Some of the things you might look at there would be classroom management, questioning techniques, the differentiation. These are all things that are part of some of the observation models that I've seen and use. And I think one thing that probably comes across a lot in conversation is the questioning model, rather than just a clear-cut yes or no or simple, to keep probing to get students to go to that next level. The next model, the goal setting, that's primarily with your tenured teachers. And what that looks like is, as a tenured teacher or a more experienced teacher, I might know some of the things I want to get better at in the classroom. And let's just take, for an example, an English language arts teacher gets back last year's MAP scores and notices a lower part of the MAP score that they want to improve on going into the next year. And so they may sit down with the supervisor, the principal, and say, I want to set up my goals based upon last year's math scores. I noticed that this had happened. Could be the math teacher algebraic equations. We want to get better at this. And so I want to set my SMART goals based on this, trying to implement some things that will help my students in that area. And so the teacher and supervisor, they agree on the goals. Could be, when I say supervisor, doesn't necessarily have to be the principal, because if you're in a building with multiple administrators, whoever is supervising that particular teacher, they would meet and establish the goals. And then you want to go back and address those throughout the year and see how they're coming on that. And one of the things they use are the SMART goals. And a SMART goal, it's specific. What do you want as a goal? How are you going to attain it? So then it's measurable. So something that's going to be specific. And then the measurable part is, how am I seeing this happen? Am I seeing some growth? Am I seeing some better? What am I using? Are my test scores indicating that we're looking better there? Is it achievable? You can't say that, I want my kids to climb, 5 RIP points in the first semester, because that's even based on nationally, that's not going to happen. Unless obviously that first test, they just, did nothing. And then is it relevant? So is it relevant to student success, to student achievement? And then what's the time frame for it? So, and then as I touched on a little bit, the potential use of MAP scores there. Another model that we talked about, the portfolio model. I don't know that I've ever heard of a school using this or seen this done, but the teacher collects their artifacts, and by doing these things, they feel they have more say in what it's going to look like. It's more proactive because the teacher gathers and evaluates the material that's in the portfolio. Student achievement model, the student growth. And then we also have the peer assistant model, experienced and successful teachers. They may have a period a day or a block of time a day to where they can go out and observe other teachers. This would probably be most efficient if you had a well-established math teacher, for example, who could go into a first-year math teacher and observe them and be able to provide some feedback and maybe collaborate with the building principal or the supervisor. So you you're almost taking that mentoring program to another level. So that's what the different types and models of teacher evaluation. It's interesting to see that each school might have something different. And so Zach and Angie, what do you guys think on these things too, talking about the different models?
I know in the districts that I've been in and currently now, we utilize the SMART goals. So our teachers and our staff set SMART goals at the beginning of the year, usually 1 or 2. And that's one of those things we talk about. You don't want to set too many goals because, again, one of the things is achievable. If you set 5, 6, 7 goals for yourself, it's too much, right? You can't focus on 7 different things. So if you can limit it down to 1 or 2 goals of things that you really do want to achieve, that's helpful. And then the peer assistant model is something that I've done in the past, or at least peer observation model, where you get a chance to go around and observe other teachers, either in your content area or maybe something outside of your content area, just to see how, pick up some different ideas. And that's one thing that I'm looking at trying to get put into place at my current district, so that we can get some of our younger and inexperienced teachers to go out and view and observe some of our more veteran teachers or more skilled. So something I'm looking at trying to get implemented here.
Yeah, we utilize SMART goals as well as part of our evaluation system. And we've had good success with that. And I agree with Zach, trying not to have a model for this part of, their year and something, a different or a goal. And having too many goals and making it difficult. When Todd was talking about the portfolio system, and artifacts, it made me think we don't use that type of evaluation system, but the program that we use, our teachers are able to electronically attach artifacts and evidence for any of the different domains on the evaluation system. So they can put as much or as little effort into that as they choose, but they can put things on there that maybe as a building principal, I wouldn't see in during an observation, or I may not know about, or they just want to make sure is attached to their evaluation. So it does provide them some other options for getting some of the things they do recognized in their evaluation.
All right. Objective 3.
Okay, so objective 3 is examining the characteristics of successful evaluation programs. And, you know, I think we're all aware that when we're working on evaluations, and the process that we do is our main purpose is to ensure that our students are taught by well-qualified teachers. And to have a successful evaluation program, whatever model you choose, we need to make sure our teachers are informed in advance. They should know what they're being evaluated on. They should know what the criteria is, and there shouldn't be any surprises when it comes time to complete an evaluation or after a formal observation. That rubric should be shared and talked about ahead of time. And we should really be focused on supporting teacher growth. I think it was talked about earlier that sometimes evaluations can be used for a variety of reasons, but we really need to look at how we can help our teachers grow, not an I got you. You know, we might notice things that there needs to be improvement on, but then we need to offer opportunity for that growth as well. And then all of our programs should be guided by written policies. Some of that falls into negotiated agreements and policy that you have within your district, but everything should be written out so that teachers and administrators know what the expectations are. There's several different approaches to evaluations. I'm sure most districts do things the same as mine, that our new teachers really are, we're giving them some feedback on basic processes, and the number of actual observations they have probably looks different than a veteran teacher. The frequency of things looks different than a veteran teacher that's performing well. So the approach you take with different experience levels should look different. So, and on here I put, you know, some feedback, but also identifying those at risk of early termination and trying to provide them support. We need to build up our teachers. A first-year teacher, we all know, doesn't come fully equipped. And so we need to use that evaluation process to help them learn and grow and get better, and provide them opportunities to develop and just get better at teaching. You know, our college programs are great, but there's just no way to cover everything that's going to come up and happen in a teacher's day. With our veteran teachers, using our programs to encourage their professional growth, and then working with them really to develop some long range plans. I had a veteran teacher, one of the first years that I was a principal, who was an outstanding teacher, but she was not comfortable leading any other teachers and helping other teachers grow. So she and I worked hard to help her be comfortable doing that, because she had a lot to offer a newer teacher. And after a couple years, she was up presenting to some of our new teachers and helping them to develop and grow. So that was great to see. When we look at our evaluation systems, we need to evaluate the evaluation systems, which sounds funny, but we really need to make sure that our systems provide what we need. There should be specific criteria in them, not just a principal subjective on the things that they see and say, but there should be criteria, and certainly making sure that they're reliable and credible. And all of our evaluation systems have to be approved. So I would like to think every district has that in place already. And then just some things to think about when conducting classroom observations. I think you're going to go into classrooms like everyone does informally, hopefully quite often. And then when you're documenting in more formal classroom observations, just gathering that data, making sure that you're taking lots of notes on the specific things that you're looking at. There's usually a general list, right, on instructional objectives. Our district doesn't follow a specific instructional model that was created outside of our district. We created our own internal instructional model. So we have specifics that we want our building principals looking at and noting. and trying to find ways to help our staff grow, which some of that growth we provide district-wide. Sometimes it's building specific, and other times it's just teacher specific, depending upon what they need. In your districts, when you look at new versus veteran teachers, does that look a little different for them?
Yeah, I know, like for us new teachers, obviously, like you said, the frequency of the observations and evaluations goes up, right? Because I just want to be in the classroom more of a new teacher to make sure that things are going well. The amount of support that a new teacher needs is a lot more than somebody who's been doing it for 15 to 20 years. And I've had very similar experiences, Angie, with some of I've had veteran teachers who are phenomenal, and I would like to see them be, a mentor or a driving force for helping our younger teachers to be more successful, things like that. And sometimes they just aren't very comfortable in that. Like they do very well in what they do, but they don't want to really share or take that leadership role. So I've been pushing a couple of my veteran teachers this year to try and take on that role of being a mentor and helping young teachers know better practices, things like that.
Yeah. I would say too, yes, with first year teachers or teachers that are new to our district, we do observe and evaluate more frequently. I think it goes back to our chapter where we talked about why teachers leave the profession as well. And if you think of age, your younger ones leaving, then it would make sense to me that we need to make them feel as comfortable with what they're doing in the profession. So even when I see something that's not as good as I'd like it to see, always remind the young teacher that, or that first year teacher, that, hey, you're still learning how to do these things. So you can't take this as you're doing a bad job. This is some things that we think we can help get better at. And again, and we talked about that, use it as a tool to help support the growth of the teacher. And what's amazing also is even with the more tenured teachers, there's things that you go in and you see and you say, hey, you could probably do, this is something I like to see improve on. One thing I do when I do observations is I do a map, and I just highlight and mark back and forth where that teacher was in the classroom. And they don't realize that. So then when you sit down and go through, here's your map, and they went from front to back and front to back and front to back, and most of the time they were in the front. They don't realize that having that proximity and moving the classroom really makes an impact on making sure all students are engaged as opposed to compliant. So that's one thing that I learned from a retired superintendent now, that he put in with his staff. I tried that this year. It really made an impact, because the first time we did it with a first year teacher, he noticed that, and the next time he was more around the room. So again, anything you can do to help improve. Then the tenured teacher, they're like, oh yeah, I do. I just stood at this one spot the entire time. And so then that was something new that they could start doing as well. So I think there's, they try and find things that can improve, but then highlight the good things. Don't just go in, well, you need to do this and this and this. Highlight the good things. Man, your kids were right on task. It's great. Your transitions were like under like 2 minutes, and your kids knew exactly what to do in this transition. So great job there, and really point out those good things.
All right. So objective 4 is examining state mandated evaluation system. And most states require regular evaluation of teachers, but it does vary by state. Some of the examples that were given in the book is that Iowa has 8 standards and Tennessee has 6 different domains that they look at. So each state has something different. And in Nebraska, we have a little bit of flexibility. We have to meet certain criteria, but we're not all handed the exact same evaluative tool that we have to use. We have to get those approved. We have to have them in policy and potentially sometimes in negotiated agreements, but we do have a little flexibility on what each district's actual final document looks like. What we use at Norfolk Public is the 4 domains, the Danielson model that has the other indicators under it. And I feel like we are able to fully evaluate and help our teachers grow through what we have. You know, we have differing expectations as far as frequency for probationary and non-probationary teachers, but not as far as what the different domains and indicators are. All of that looks the same. It's more of the procedure and timeline of it all that looks different. So I don't know if there's a lot of input on this objective. I think
I could see the benefit of having like a statewide evaluation tool, because, you know, most of your teachers, if there are teachers that move district to district, they're usually going to move within the same state. So, you know, if you could get this one teacher moves from this city to this city, and you could get their old evaluations from the last school, they would line up a little bit more. I mean, here you might be getting evaluated on Marzano, and then you go to a new district and now it's Danielson, then you go to a new district and it's something else. And so that part makes it a little interesting. So I do see a benefit of having everything be the same, but it is kind of nice in Nebraska that schools can choose what fits their district the best.
Yeah,
I agree. We use Danielson, and the main thing we do with that is we sit down as an administrative team, all the principals, and go through the different domains that are in there, and then make sure we have a common language so that when we're so that our entire district, as we discuss these things, we understand what we're talking about, or have a good understanding.
All right. So we are getting close to running out of time on our Zoom meeting here. I got 5 minutes and 40 seconds. I'll see if I can cover these last 2 objectives, or we can as a group here quickly. So the next thing is evaluating of principals, and it talks about page 155 says that principals are key players in creating effective schools. They provide vital leadership by setting priorities, motivating staff, promoting good teaching, and involving parents and community leaders in school programs. I took that quote out, and basically what I make of it is principals run a school, right? I mean, it's their job to put the school in a good place, run the school, and make sure that students are being successful and student learning is being achieved. That being said, the evaluation of principals does not get a lot of attention. The book talks about usually a principal will get evaluated maybe once a year, some principals every other year. And so it talks about how, you know, we spend a lot of time with teacher evaluation, but principals are not being evaluated at the same level. Principals are usually evaluated by a central office administrator. I know in our district, it's our superintendent, that uses a similar model that we use for teachers, which is, you know, there's positives and drawbacks to that. I've seen McCrell, one of the districts that I was in used McCrell as their administrative evaluation tool. Ours is something that we're in the process of updating, because it's been the same for probably 10 years now, and it needs some updating. But an alternative approach to this is the 360-degree model. So I'm going to go to that here. The 360-degree feedback is used to give leaders feedback on their performance from others that are familiar with their work, like colleagues, superiors, and subordinates. So assistant principals would evaluate the principal, office staff, the teachers, other people would have a chance to evaluate the principal. And it is not intended to support decisions about salary, promotion, or termination. So this is more of, I think Todd mentioned something about his own, you know, evaluation that he sends out to his staff. It's kind of more along those lines to point out things that are being done well and things that are not. And one of the benefits they say to this program is that it's more reliable and comprehensive. If it's coming from just one person, the principal may not buy into it as much as, okay, that's one person's opinion. But if you're getting feedback from all different areas and everyone is saying that, you know what, your communication was lacking, then you know that that's an area that needs to be improved. And the weaknesses here is survey fatigue. People get tired of filling out evaluative tools for the principal maybe, and then relies on knowledgeable coaches to help leaders improve. It's one thing for principals to pull out that, you know what, my communication is lacking. It's another then to have somebody be able to coach that principal through how do we improve our communication skills. And then that's the big thing, is lack of coaches may lead to failure here. And then on this page, it just shows the performance criteria for the principals, all the different facets of what they need to cover. And then the ratings go: needs improvement, adequate, more than adequate. One of my personal qualms with this is that changing from a teacher just a couple of years ago now to an administrator, one of the difficulties is I don't believe that teachers really understand what a principal does every day. So one of the things that I find issues with would be that teachers may give you poor ratings on some of these things without actually understanding what's being done. They may not have a full understanding, at least, of the day-to-day things that the principal is doing. And so, or you may get some, I guess you'd have to take it with a grain of salt. You may get some disgruntled people who aren't happy and give you a certain evaluation on something just because they're not happy with that specific piece. So definitely a more comprehensive thing, but could be less effective, I guess. So any thoughts on that?
I think our thoughts probably need to be real brief. You got about a minute for the
Yeah.
last.
Well, and we may have to just restart, and I can splice the videos together, but and then the last thing talks about legal considerations and personnel evaluations. And it says teacher evaluations provoke more legal challenges than any other decision that a school will make. We've talked about it already once in this chapter. Most states require teachers to be notified in advance of what they will be evaluated upon. I know in our district, we have teachers sign a paper that says that they've been informed and that they know what they will be evaluated upon. Negotiated agreements may contain provisions on evaluations, and then legal challenges usually take form in questioning the criteria that's used to decide if a teacher is doing well or not. And then courts usually consider whether teachers were given an opportunity to do better, which is where your improvement plans and things would come into play. And then limiting legal challenges if you can. It gives you 10 rules here to follow. Basically, follow your evaluation rules. Don't give them any surprises. Let them know when you're going to evaluate. Avoid nitpicking on specific things. Have backing for your comments. Be fair. Offer assistance. And then always at the end, it says anticipate legal action.